What started as a quiet interview turned into political shockwaves across the nation. Pam Bondi wasn't defending herself, she was exposing secrets. Her target? New York's own Letitia James. And what Bondi revealed live on air left even insiders speechless. This wasn't about politics, it was about truth, power, and what James never wanted you to find out. Letitia James has built her reputation as a fierce prosecutor, especially when it comes to investigating powerful conservatives. Her high-profile cases and fiery public statements have made her a household name, often celebrated on one side of the aisle and sharply criticized on the other. With bold headlines, sweeping legal moves, and a commanding media presence, James has become one of the most recognized state attorneys general in America. But according to Pam Bondi, former Florida Attorney General and seasoned legal heavyweight, there's more to the story, and it's not something James wants the public to know. During a recent primetime interview, Bondi wasn't just commenting on the news, she was making it. Calm, composed, and confident, she leaned in and dropped what many now consider a bombshell moment. There are documents, internal memos, real things that Letitia James never wanted the public to see, Bondi stated clearly. It wasn't speculation. It wasn't a vague accusation. She claimed to have seen the proof. Bondi explained that these files included everything from conflicting internal statements to direct communications between James's office and outside political consultants. These weren't the kinds of documents found in a press release or uncovered in public court filings. These were confidential communications and suppressed materials that, according to Bondi, had been deliberately withheld or downplayed. And they weren't supposed to be public, but somehow, through leaks, insider access, or whistleblowers, they had made their way into the hands of people who knew exactly what they were looking at. People like Pam Bondi. What made the moment even more explosive was the way Bondi delivered it. She didn't yell. She didn't wave her hands or speak in vague generalities. She calmly laid out her claim, suggesting that not only was there a deeper strategy behind James's investigations, but that parts of that strategy were hidden from the public for a reason. According to Bondi, some of the documents revealed coordinated timing between public announcements and major media coverage. Others reportedly showed that certain decisions made by James's team were based less on legal merit and more on political timing, especially in the lead-up to election cycles. Bondi also suggested that certain pieces of testimony were either ignored or actively suppressed because they didn't fit the desired narrative. This raised serious questions. Was evidence being filtered to create a story? Were political goals shaping the prosecution strategies? And more importantly, if this was true, what else had been hidden? The implications were enormous. Letitia James has positioned herself as a champion of accountability, transparency, and justice. But Bondi's allegations pointed to a much different reality, one where narrative and optics may have taken precedence over fairness and due process. As soon as the interview aired, social media exploded. Bondi's quote was clipped and shared across YouTube, TikTok, and Twitter. Headlines followed. Bondi drops bomb on Letitia James. Hidden memos exposed. And Pam Bondi, what they didn't want you to see. Letitia James's office quickly responded, calling Bondi's claims unfounded and politically motivated. A spokesperson released a statement insisting that their investigations had always been guided by facts, not partisanship, and that any suggestion otherwise was an attempt to discredit the rule of law. But Bondi didn't back down. In fact, she doubled down. "This isn't about politics," she said in a follow-up interview. "This is about the truth. The public deserves to know when power is being misused, especially by those claiming to protect it." Legal analysts began weighing in. Some defended James, saying every prosecutor consults with media teams and legal advisors. But others admitted, if Bondi's claims were true and could be verified, this could raise ethical concerns and even prompt formal inquiries. Questions emerged in political circles too. Why would Bondi, who has nothing to gain politically at this moment, make such a bold statement unless she had the receipts? Interestingly, Bondi didn't release the documents during the interview. She said they were with the right people and would be revealed through proper legal channels. That statement alone hinted at a strategic move, perhaps part of a larger plan to bring accountability in a more formal setting. It wasn't the kind of threat made for headlines. It was a warning, and it sounded like one backed by a file folder full of facts. Meanwhile, public attention on Letitia James intensified. Critics began demanding transparency, while supporters grew defensive. But something had changed. Bondi's calm delivery and legal credibility gave her words weight, and that weight didn't fade with the news cycle. It lingered. What started as a routine interview turned into one of the most talked about moments in recent legal political history. Bondi, long respected in legal circles, reminded everyone that sometimes the biggest revelations don't come from shouting, they come from someone who knows exactly where to look and when to speak. In a world full of political noise, Pam Bondi's revelation stood out for one reason. It wasn't noise at all. It was a direct hit, aimed not at headlines but at the heart of power. And if her claims continue to unfold the way she hinted, this may be just the beginning of a much bigger story. One that Letitia James may not be able to control for much longer. The interview took place on a nationally syndicated legal news show, the kind that usually leans more into analysis than drama. It was expected to be another routine panel, former attorneys, legal analysts, and media-savvy political voices discussing the intersection of law and politics. But this time, something was different. Sitting center stage was Pam Bondi, former Florida Attorney General, calm, poised, and carrying a look that said she wasn't there to play games. The discussion had barely gotten underway when it shifted from policy talk to something far more explosive. Pam Bondi didn't raise her voice. She didn't wave papers or slam anyone with sensational accusations. Instead, she simply leaned in and told her story. It was the way she said it that made the room go still. "If the public saw what I saw," she said, locking eyes with the moderator, "they would question every case that's been politically weaponized." No theatrics, no anger, just a controlled, confident assertion, one that felt heavy with implication. The moderator looked stunned. The other panelists, even those who typically disagreed with Bondi's views, stayed quiet. Everyone knew something significant had just been said, but it wasn't until after the show aired that the moment really caught fire. Within minutes of broadcast, short video clips started popping up on Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok. A few minutes later, those clips had subtitles, dramatic zoom-ins, and even legal commentary overlays. Social media had taken hold, and it wasn't letting go. Trending hashtags began appearing before the next commercial break. Hashtag Bondi reveals, hashtag Letitia files, hashtag what are they hiding. Twitter threads speculated about what Bondi might have seen. YouTubers rushed to go live with breaking overlays, offering hot takes and frame-by-frame breakdowns of the interview. Even creators who usually stayed out of political discussions were chiming in, reacting to Bondi's calm demeanor and the weight of her words. In the span of an hour, Pam Bondi had gone from a guest on a legal news show to the center of a national conversation. What exactly was she talking about? That was the question echoing across media circles, podcasts, and dinner tables. She hadn't shown the documents. She hadn't named all the names. But she'd seen something, and whatever it was, she made it clear it wasn't good. According to Bondi, the materials she referenced were not merely technical errors or administrative oversights. They were deliberate, structured, suppressed for a reason. And the most chilling part? She implied that these documents weren't isolated. They were part of a pattern. The discussion now extended beyond Bondi and Letitia James. It became a larger debate about the power of prosecutors, the politicization of the legal system, and how truth can sometimes be obscured behind strategy and timing. Political commentators from both ends of the spectrum weighed in. Some defended Letitia James, arguing she had always been transparent and aggressive for the sake of justice. But others, even those not aligned with Bondi politically, admitted she raised valid concerns. When someone with Bondi's credentials and experience makes a claim like that, people pay attention. In the hours that followed, several legal experts went live on their platforms, dissecting Bondi's statement word by word. One noted that her use of the term politically weaponized wasn't random, that it carried legal weight and pointed toward concerns that certain prosecutions may have been influenced by partisan goals rather than legal necessity. Another pointed out the gravity of Bondi's delivery. She didn't speculate, she stated. And when lawyers do that in public, especially with reputations like hers on the line, it usually means they have something to back it up. Meanwhile, Letitia James's office scrambled to respond. A press release was issued, calling the claims misleading and baseless, asserting that her office operates under the highest standards of integrity and transparency. But the tone of the release lacked the firmness one might expect. It didn't slam the door shut, it left it cracked, just enough for more questions to creep in. And Bondi? She didn't respond with fire. She didn't go on a follow-up media blitz. She simply said, "Let them deny it. The truth has a way of surfacing." That one sentence went nearly as viral as her original interview. Memes were made, commentators quoted it, talk radio opened entire segments discussing what truth, exactly, Bondi believed was about to surface. The fact that she wasn't rushing to release the documents only added fuel to the intrigue. It felt less like a political stunt and more like the beginning of a carefully timed unveiling. By the end of the week, the story was still growing. More legal insiders began suggesting that there had been whispers for months about irregularities in some of James's investigations. Bondi's revelation brought those whispers to the surface. Suddenly, what had been dismissed as partisan criticism was being taken seriously. And that's the power of one moment. One calm, focused delivery, one person willing to say on national television that something wasn't right and hint that they had the evidence to prove it. Pam Bondi didn't come with rage. She came with receipts, just enough to make the entire country lean in. And now everyone is watching to see what happens next. So, what exactly was in the documents Pam Bondi referenced during her now viral interview? That's the question everyone wanted an answer to. And while she didn't reveal everything, she gave just enough detail to ignite a national firestorm. Bondi made it clear, this wasn't speculation. This wasn't political posturing. This was about evidence, actual documents that, according to her, pointed to something far more troubling than anyone had anticipated. She didn't name every file or show every page. She said that would come later. But what she shared in that moment was enough to get the media spinning and the public asking the most important question. How deep does this go? Bondi began by describing inconsistencies in official case timelines from Letitia James's office. She hinted that in some cases, the internal records didn't match the publicly released statements. According to Bondi, the timelines for certain legal actions appeared to be deliberately edited or reworded before being released to the media, raising serious doubts about whether some investigations had been manipulated to fit a public relations schedule, rather than being based on real-time legal developments. These weren't just clerical errors, she implied. They were coordinated efforts to create a particular image or advance a specific agenda. Then came the second revelation, perhaps even more alarming. Bondi stated that the documents pointed to what she described as politically motivated targeting. She suggested that some individuals and organizations were selected for investigation not because of overwhelming evidence or legal cause, but because of their political affiliations, public support for certain figures, or past statements. In one instance, Bondi claimed that staffers in James's office had flagged potential targets for investigation based on media impact and the potential to generate headlines. That statement alone shocked many in the legal community. If true, it would call into question the integrity of high-profile prosecutions and could even open the door for legal pushback from those who were allegedly targeted. As if that wasn't enough, Bondi also mentioned the suppression of testimony from former staff members inside the Attorney General's office. She said some whistleblowers had come forward with concerns about internal practices, but their testimonies were never recorded, filed, or acknowledged. One document, according to Bondi, contained handwritten notes from a senior staffer expressing worry that certain testimony could conflict with the official statement already drafted for press release. In other words, if what the staffers said didn't support the public narrative, it was buried or ignored altogether. But perhaps the most explosive revelation of all came when Bondi referenced media strategy memos, internal documents showing coordinated communication plans between James's office and outside media consultants. These notes, Bondi claimed, showed that media narratives were being crafted even before legal action was finalized. Headlines were being discussed before charges were filed. Talking points were being drafted days in advance of official press conferences. The implication was chilling. Justice wasn't just being served, it was being packaged, branded, and sold to the public. Bondi didn't flinch as she explained this. She didn't embellish or make wild predictions. She laid out the facts she said she had access to, and then let them speak for themselves. Her tone was confident, not theatrical, and that made it all the more believable. "These aren't just ethical red flags," she said firmly. "They're proof of a narrative being crafted behind closed doors." The statement landed like a hammer. Of course, Letitia James's team immediately pushed back. Within hours of Bondi's interview airing, a spokesperson for the New York Attorney General's office issued a brief but forceful statement. It dismissed Bondi's claims as completely false and politically motivated. The statement emphasized that all actions taken by the office were in full compliance with state law and conducted with the highest ethical standards. But Bondi wasn't moved. She doubled down in a follow-up appearance the next day, reiterating that her sources were credible, her documentation was real, and the public deserved to know the full picture. "They can deny it all they want," she said during the follow-up, "but the facts don't lie." That line quickly became one of the most quoted phrases from the entire scandal. It was shared across social media platforms, turned into a meme, printed on t-shirts, and even used in headline commentary on political news shows. People were drawn to Bondi's calm conviction, her refusal to get into a shouting match, her steady hand when the stakes were rising. In the days that followed, public interest only grew. Analysts on both conservative and mainstream networks debated the seriousness of Bondi's claims. Was this just a partisan shot across the bow, or did it mark the beginning of a larger reckoning inside a powerful legal office? As more people demanded transparency and evidence, one thing became clear. Pam Bondi had opened a door that wasn't going to close quietly. The internet exploded. It wasn't just a trending moment, it was a digital wildfire. YouTube videos analyzing Pam Bondi's claims began racking up millions of views within hours. Some creators broke down every sentence of her interview, frame by frame, while others went live with real-time reactions, saying they hadn't seen something this politically gripping in years. Political commentary channels, both left-leaning and conservative, jumped into the story. Even outlets that were typically skeptical of Bondi or leaned toward Letitia James's positions couldn't ignore what was happening. The coverage spread like lightning across every platform. Twitter threads, Instagram reels, TikTok edits, and Facebook debates. Everyone had a take, and no one was staying silent. What made the situation even more unique was the tone Bondi had set. She hadn't come in ranting or trying to be provocative. She wasn't angry or emotional. She was calm, deliberate, and almost surgical in the way she revealed what she knew. And it was that quiet confidence that seemed to grab people's attention. Even her critics had to pause. Pundits and panelists who often dismissed Bondi as a partisan voice admitted, at least for a moment, that she seemed different this time. She wasn't just throwing out red meat for a base. She looked and sounded like someone who knew more than she was saying, someone with the receipts to back it up. Meanwhile, Letitia James's office scrambled. What had started as a simple TV appearance by a former attorney general had snowballed into a full-blown national controversy. A spokesperson quickly released a statement condemning Bondi's interview, calling it a desperate act of political theater and an attempt to distract the public from real justice being served. But rather than shutting down the story, the official response only poured gasoline on the fire. Viewers online immediately began questioning why the statement was so defensive, why it lacked specifics, and why it attacked Bondi's character without addressing the substance of what she had claimed. Some began wondering aloud, if the claims were really baseless, why respond at all? Then came the key realization that shifted the narrative even more. Pam Bondi wasn't running for office. She wasn't launching a campaign, publishing a book, or trying to score airtime on talk shows. She hadn't been front and center in political media for some time. So why now? Why would she suddenly emerge and risk going head-to-head with someone as powerful and prominent as Letitia James, unless she truly had something solid? That question quickly started echoing across media outlets, political podcasts, and thousands of comment sections. It became the one thing everyone kept coming back to. If there was no personal gain to be had and no political angle to play, what did Bondi stand to benefit? The answer seems simple: nothing, unless she was telling the truth. That line of reasoning resonated with people in a way that statements from politicians rarely do. It gave her an authenticity boost that most political figures struggle to earn. She came off as someone stepping forward because she felt she had no choice, because the public deserved to know what was really going on behind the scenes, and that authenticity was magnetic. Online debates turned into investigative deep dives. Independent journalists began digging through past cases from James's office, looking for any signs of the issues Bondi had hinted at. Were there other examples of unusual media coordination? Had there been complaints of selective prosecution? Were any whistleblowers out there waiting to speak up? Forums lit up with speculation, with users sharing timelines, analyzing memos from old press releases, and comparing public statements to court filings. In some cases, inconsistencies started to emerge. They weren't explosive by themselves, but they were enough to raise eyebrows. Bondi, meanwhile, remained steady. She didn't overstep. She didn't reveal more than she intended. She simply stood by what she said and reiterated that more would come out through the appropriate legal channels. That phrase became a kind of mantra among her supporters, a signal that she was playing the long game, not the media game. And the longer she held that line, the more credibility she seemed to build. In a media environment where accusations often disappear within 24 hours, Bondi's story refused to die down. As each hour passed, more political voices joined the discussion. Some tried to dismiss her claims as a coordinated conservative attack on James. Others called for transparency, saying the only way to settle the issue was to release whatever documents were in question. A few legal analysts began to speculate that if even part of what Bondi claimed was true, it could spark ethics reviews or even formal investigations. Not just into James, but into the broader pattern of politically charged prosecutions across the country. In just a few days, what began as a moment on a talk show had become a serious national conversation. The power of the moment wasn't in how loud it was in how focused it was. One woman, not campaigning, not shouting, not asking for anything, came forward with information. And because of her credentials, demeanor, and timing, she had the entire country's attention. Whether her full claims would be confirmed or not, one thing was undeniable. Pam Bondi had changed the conversation, and Letitia James now had questions to answer. This wasn't just about Pam Bondi and Letitia James. As the conversation spread, as reactions poured in from every corner of the internet and cable news alike, it became clear that something larger was unfolding. This wasn't just a legal spat between two high-profile women in politics. This was a moment about something far bigger, something deeper. It was about transparency. It was about accountability. And most of all, it was about the growing concern many Americans feel about the weaponization of legal power for political gain. Pam Bondi, whether you agree with her politics or not, stepped into a spotlight that she didn't ask for. She wasn't trying to boost a campaign. She wasn't selling a book. She wasn't angling for a Fox News contract or a Senate run. She walked into a studio, shared what she believed was the truth, and then walked away without asking for applause. She didn't turn the interview into a crusade or a press tour. She simply made her point and let it hang there for the public to examine. In that interview, Bondi made her motive clear. "This isn't about revenge. This isn't about headlines," she said in her steady, composed tone. "It's about waking people up." She wasn't there to settle a score with Letitia James. She wasn't playing political chess. What she wanted, she said, was for Americans, no matter their political affiliation, to realize that when power is abused behind the scenes, everyone loses. And if people don't speak up, those abuses continue unchecked. Her words carried weight because they weren't delivered with fire. They were delivered with purpose. "This isn't about left or right," she added. "It's about telling the truth, even when it's inconvenient." That line echoed far beyond the interview room. It became a quote that news anchors and influencers repeated, printed in bold type across thumbnails and headlines. Commentators noted that Bondi, often known for her sharp political commentary, had set aside partisanship to focus on principle. She didn't accuse the entire system. She didn't attack every prosecutor. She called out a specific issue, one she believed was backed by documentation, testimony, and undeniable patterns. And whether people supported Bondi or not, one thing stood out across the board: her bravery. Going on national television to challenge someone as high-profile and influential as Letitia James wasn't a small move. Bondi knew the backlash would come. She knew the headlines would turn harsh. She knew critics would call her out, try to discredit her, and question her motives. But she went forward anyway, calmly, steadily, and without flinching. It's rare in modern politics to see someone stand alone with nothing to gain, but that's exactly what made Bondi's interview so powerful. She wasn't trying to win anything. She was trying to reveal something. And the fact that she did so without a dramatic buildup or flashy accusations made it even more compelling. Bondi let the facts, or at least her outline of them, speak for themselves, and the public took notice. Meanwhile, the spotlight that had once been solely on Bondi was now beginning to turn toward Letitia James. The pressure was mounting. Political commentators, legal analysts, and even casual viewers began to ask the tough questions. Would James address the claims directly? Would she release documents to clear the air? Was there any truth to the allegations? As each day passed without a detailed rebuttal, the silence began to grow louder. The internet kept buzzing. Bondi's quotes were clipped and remixed into TikToks. Memes showed her sitting calmly across from a storm of media spin. On podcasts, people from across the political spectrum discussed the deeper issue at hand. When does justice stop being justice and start becoming strategy? When does a prosecutor cross the line from pursuing truth to building a personal brand? These were the questions now dominating the public discourse. For Bondi, the response was both overwhelming and encouraging. She received messages from lawyers, journalists, and even former staffers who said her interview gave voice to concerns they'd been quietly holding on to. Not because they supported one party over another, but because they saw something wrong in how political power could bend the legal process. In a time when people are more divided than ever, Bondi's message struck a rare chord of unity. She didn't ask anyone to vote red or blue. She didn't call for protests or petitions. She simply said, look closer, ask questions, don't accept every headline without knowing what's behind it. And in doing so, she reminded people of the value of skepticism, not cynicism, but critical thinking. The ripple effect of that one interview was undeniable. Bondi didn't need to scream to be heard. She didn't need to trend for shock value. She became the center of a national conversation because she told a story that felt bigger than politics. It felt like a fight for fairness, for truth, and for the idea that no one, no matter how powerful, should be beyond scrutiny. And as for Letitia James, the pressure is now on. The public eye is sharper, more alert, and demanding answers. Because thanks to one interview, one moment of truth, and one unshaken voice willing to risk criticism in the name of clarity, an entire country is now watching, listening, and waiting to see what happens next. Thanks for watching. I hope you like this video. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more content like this every day.